Watching. Hi, and thanks for watching. I guess it makes sense to me that before anybody can think about believing in Jesus or believe in Jesus, they got to first believe in God. They got to believe that God exists and that God is the Father and He created the world. So with that in mind, sometime back I was talking to this fellow on the street and kind of sharing this with him, and his immediate response, which is very typical of people, was, "Well, show me the proof. Can you prove what you're saying? Where's your proof?" So it's like, well, I mean, I could tell you where my proof is, but I'll start off with, what you believe. If you don't, believe in the, creation, what do you believe? And of course, he believed that we evolved from some blob of goo in the sea, and that the Earth was created by some cosmic accident, the Big Bang or whatever. He didn't really call it that, but he said some big cosmic event. That's what he said. And I said, "Oh, and how do you know this?" He says, "Well, the scientists, they have, la-di-da." And I said, so can you prove that? He's like, "Well, of course not. I'm not a scientist." And so I asked him, "Well, do they have proof? Where's the proof?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know." I'm like, "Well," I told him, "well, the thing with it is, they have no proof, because evolution, they even call it the theory of evolution. The Big Bang, they call it the Big Bang theory. And the difference in theory and fact, why it's called a theory, is because there is no fact that will prove it. It's a theory because it's based with factual, stuff or whatever, or their idea of fact. But they have no proof. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a theory. It would be evolution. Instead, it's the theory of evolution. It would be, this is how it was done. Now, granted, and it's still a theory. Now, granted, in the schools, they pretty much teach that this is how it's done. And even they'll admit yet that it's still a theory. So how can they teach a theory as fact when they can't actually prove this theory? Anyway, so that's kind of what I told him about that. And of course, he didn't appreciate that. He says, "Well, you still, you said you could prove the Bible, so prove it, And it's like, well, it's not really my job to prove it, but we're going to have to look at this. Evolution, on the one hand, is somebody's theory and somebody's idea, or the Big Bang or whatever. We'll start with the Big Bang, I guess. And then on the other hand, we have a book written by those who are supposed to be eyewitnesses. So, okay, let's start with your proof in the Big Bang. Supposedly, there's this big void. I don't know exactly the facts. I'm not into that kind of stuff. But supposedly, there's this big void in space, and all the matter came together in this big, massive vacuum, and it expanded suddenly. And this created all forms of life that we know today. Well, no, it created the basis for all forms of life that we know today. Now, okay, that's their theory. I mean, obviously, there's derivatives of it, and I don't quite have it right, but that's the basis. Now, the Earth, the world, everything in the world and everything in the world is made up, supposedly by the scientists believe, what they've discovered so far is 118 basic elements. Okay, I believe that. They claim to have the science behind that, so I'm not going to argue. Now, what happens when you take 118 different colors of paint and you put it in a big bucket, blobs of 118 different colors, and you kind of swirl it around a little bit? First of all, it starts to swirl and blend, but you have swirls of colors. So you shake it real good, and what do you got? Gray. You're going to end up with gray. They call it Seattle gray because that's what people used to do, is mix all these mist tints together and make this gray color to paint their houses, and it's very cheap. You don't have a blob of this and a blob of red and a blob of blue and a blob of green. You don't have it. It never comes out like that. And you can keep shaking it and keep shaking it and doing whatever, and it's going to be gray. It's going to be a shade of gray. So these 118 basic elements, these 118 basic elements, you got it in this big cosmic vacuum, and it's all packed together, and it goes, boom, what are you going to have? Are you going to have this little section of this element and that element? I think you're going to have a big blob, just a big blob. H2O, let's take H2O. It's 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. Okay, those are both gases, right? But that makes water. I can't figure that out. I'm not a scientist, like I say. But so you got H2O, and that makes water. And so you got O2, and that makes the air that we breathe. That's 2 parts of oxygen. So how does the elements differentiate whether it's going to be 2 parts of hydrogen and 1 part of oxygen, or whether it's just going to be 2 parts of oxygen and 1 hydrogen? Where's the differentiation? Why is it that you have the water over here, the H2O right here, and the O2 touching it? Yet they never combine or blend. It's always H2O and O2. I can't figure that out. But I'm not a scientist, so, anyway, we'll just leave that alone. So there's his argument. Okay? Does that make sense to anybody? It doesn't make sense to me. I can't possibly believe that because it's ridiculous, because I know the way things work, and they just don't work that way. So that's his theory, or that's the scientist's theory that he's going to buy and believe. Now, on the other hand, we've got this book. These people claim to be eyewitnesses. Or the first 5 books they don't, but throughout the rest of the Bible they claim to be eyewitness events and accounts. So I have on the one hand some weird idea that doesn't even make sense, and on the other hand I have at least an eyewitness account. And there is no other explanation. So, how does any intelligent thinking human being possibly believe that all of this came about by chance? I don't understand. Anyway, with that in mind, so we get past that. So what is the explanation if not God, then, if not that? Well, scientists now come up with what they call intelligent design. Okay, yeah, I believe that. Duh, how could it be anything else? So now we got to ask, who is the designer? And where is the designer? And why don't we know who they are if not God? Every religion in the world that believes in a creator believes in God in some form or another. Some people call him this, some people call him that, but every religion in the world that believes in a creator believes in God. And the first 5 books of the Bible, they all believe it. They don't like it or agree with it, some of them, but they all believe it. And so, to me, we have that's somebody's explanation in the story of the beginning, and on the other hand, we have nothing else. Nothing. If there's another creator, why haven't they shared this with us? Why haven't they come down? Why haven't they said, hey, I created you guys. I'm just checking in and see how you're doing. I just wanted to kind of see how my creation's getting along and all. There's nothing. The only thing that we have that's supposedly, put out by the Creator himself, by the one that created us, is the Bible. The first 5 books of the Bible, the Old Testament of the Bible, pretty much the Old Testament, really. The first 5 books of the history of creation, that's not eyewitness history, although from the Exodus on it is. Well, actually, from the beginning of man on it is. But the rest of the Bible, the rest of the Old Testament, after Deuteronomy, from Joshua and on, when they moved into the Promised Land, this is all written history. It's all recorded history. It's backed up by other history, and this, that, and the other. So, I guess, you want to believe in the Big Bang? You're going to believe in the Big Bang. Oh, one last thing. As far as actually knowing, Romans 1:20, the Apostle Paul said, the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen. Therefore, we are without excuse. In other words, if you choose not to believe in God, you choose not to believe in a creator, it's only because you don't want to believe in a creator. That's basically what the scripture's saying. And to me, same thing, the creation itself proves that there's a creator and not some big cosmic accident. That's my thoughts for today. I guess we'll have to go on with the evolution of man some other time. I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'll just let you go. Thank you for watching today.